Hello. Welcome to your first course in thinking outside the box. The purpose of this brief tutorial is to provide you with an example of what can be accomplished if you are both willing and able to step outside the establishment's comfort zone, observe the world with an open mind, apply at least a little common sense, and most importantly, think for yourself. Now, before we get too far into this little demonstration, I need to make a disclaimer. I cannot prove to you that what you're about to see is possible in the real world. The reasons for this? I do not have the money, the materials, the equipment, or the expertise required to assemble this device. That said, however, all the information you will need, if you should happen to have these things, is being provided so that you can assemble this device and prove to yourself, one way or the other, as to whether or not it is possible. Good luck.
We are going to begin this course in thinking outside the box with a basic understanding of magnets. What are they? How do they work? And what is a magnetic field? We are not going to get too bogged down in the technical details of magnets and magnetism because, while that information may be important on some level, giving yourself over to a complete understanding of these details could quite easily get in the way of your ability to think for yourself and visualize what you hope to accomplish. Permanent magnets are objects that produce their own persistent magnetic fields. They are made of ferromagnetic materials such as iron and nickel that have been magnetized, and they have both a north and a south pole. Magnetic poles cannot exist apart from each other. All magnets have both north and south poles, which cannot be separated without creating two magnets, each having a north and a south pole. The magnetic field of a small magnet is proportional to the magnet's strength. What I personally haven't been able to figure out is if a magnetic field is a simple linear force or a form of acceleration with a limited sphere of influence. Ah well. Anyway, for those of you familiar with the Star Wars saga, the magnetic field of a simple magnet looks something like Princess Leia on a bad hair day, as viewed from above. About the only other thing you really need to know about magnets is that north repels north, south repels south, and north and south attract each other. Now, if you are willing to do a little research into magnets and magnetism, you will eventually come across something called a Halbach array. A Halbach array is a peculiar, some would say counterintuitive, arrangement of magnets that does something really rather remarkable. Instead of simply increasing the surface area of a magnetic field, a Halbach array essentially doubles the strength of the field on one side and almost eliminates it on the other. The magnetic field created by a 5-magnet linear Halbach array, when viewed from above, looks an awful lot like a short board, wearing a big old pair of clown shoes that stick out front, an old worn-out pair of Mickey Mouse ears that droop off the ends, and a lumpy travel belt with 6 stuffed pouches sticking out the back. The nice thing about a Halbach array is that it can be arranged in such a way as to magnify either the North Pole or the South Pole. The next thing we are going to be taking a look at in this little exercise is the circle. Mathematicians will give you all kinds of complex formulas and equations to describe a circle, but at its core, a circle is little more than a line that describes an arc of 360 degrees around a singular point in a two-dimensional plane, whereby all points on this line are the same distance from that singular point. My reason for including the circle in this discussion stems from the fact that a true circle is completely symmetrical on a two-dimensional plane. Additionally, the line of a circle is, in theory, never-ending. The other major reason for including the circle in this discussion stems from the fact that if you were to spin just about any shape around its geographical center on a two-dimensional plane, its outer edges would trace the shape of a circle on that plane. And I figured that Starting with the circle would save a heck of a lot of time. And besides, for what we are about to do, the circle is the most energy efficient shape out there. What we are going to do is create two circular rings of Halbach arrays. One of these rings will be slightly smaller than the other because the smaller ring is going to have to be able to fit inside the larger ring, and using the amplified magnetic fields created by the Halbach arrays, spin with everything it's got as the internal magnetic field of the outer ring tries to repel the external magnetic field of the inner ring. For the purposes of this demonstration, all 120 of the Halbach arrays we are going to be building will need to amplify either the north magnetic field or the south magnetic field. They have all got to be one orientation or the other to maximize the effects of this design. For the outer ring, the amplified field should be directed inwards at an angle of 45 degrees to the perpendicular. In this case, the perpendicular refers to the point at which a straight line drawn from the circle's center meets the line describing the circle's perimeter. All of the arrays should be oriented in the same relative direction so that if the resulting magnetic field could be visualized, it would flow smoothly around the internal perimeter of the circle. In this example, I have directed the arrays so that the resulting magnetic field would flow smoothly around the inner perimeter of the circle without interruption in a counterclockwise direction. In case you are wondering, the reason I specified the construction of 120 Halbach arrays is because this mental model is only about 15.5 inches in diameter, and the Halbach arrays are being constructed with 1/4 inch cube magnets. Given these dimensions, the closest I can pack these arrays with any degree of certainty, should I ever be given the opportunity to design, print, and build this thing, is about one array every 3 degrees, which, depending upon the materials used in the 3D printing process, should provide for enough stability for the thing to hold together once it is fully assembled. Now, when it comes to assembling the smaller internal ring, the arrays have got to be mounted in such a way as to directly oppose the magnetic field of the outer ring. In this case, the resulting magnetic field should flow in a clockwise direction around the outside of the circle's perimeter. Now, before we get too carried away with this process, there is something we need to do to make this mental model as efficient as possible. To reduce the possibility of wobble as much as possible, and to reduce the amount of friction to a bare minimum, we are going to need to suspend the inner ring within a magnetic field so that it is essentially floating and spinning within a three-dimensional cushion of magnetic energy. To accomplish this, we are going to have to either buy or build 4 magnetic levitation rings that are the same diameter as the inner ring of Halbach arrays. 2 of these levitation rings will be mounted on the upper and lower surfaces of the inner ring, preferably with the same polarity facing outward. When we are finished, the other 2 levitation rings will be mounted over the upper and lower rims of the outer ring in such a way as to create a magnetic cushion that will suspend the inner ring in a sturdy magnetic field. True, mounting the second outer levitation ring might be a bit tricky, but in the end this arrangement will provide the vertical stability we are looking for, as well as helping to reduce the amount of friction the inner ring will have to overcome as it spins. Once it is completely assembled, the only way that I can see for you to make it any more efficient than this current arrangement will provide is to place it in a vacuum. Well, that's not exactly true. You see, if we were to turn this thing loose and let it spin, we would have 2 rings spinning in opposite directions, when our goal is to have just the inner ring spinning at its maximum potential velocity. To accomplish this, we need to mount the outer ring on some kind of immovable base. This will result in the outer ring not spinning at all, and the inner ring accelerating to its maximum potential velocity. So far in this mental exercise, we have upgraded our basic understanding of magnetism with the discovery of something called a Halbach array, and combined that with the basic understanding of circles to create a ring of magnets that is suspended within a relatively frictionless magnetic field in such a way as to make it possible for the inner ring of magnets to accelerate and spin at its maximum potential velocity. But what good is this? Well, let's take the next step, shall we? And mount a solid disk within the center of that inner ring. It doesn't have to be heavy or anything, but it does need to be solid to keep the friction from wind resistance to a bare minimum. With this arrangement, what we have essentially created is a permanent magnetic gyroscope. If you would like this to serve as a gyroscope, then the disk should be balanced and have some substance to it. Are you with me so far? The reason I ask is because so far we haven't really done anything to challenge the current paradigm, or threaten the powers that wanna be. That is about to change. So far as I have been able to determine, there is absolutely nothing that says that our disk has to be thin and flat. For the next stage in the evolution of this exercise, I am going to propose the creation of a disk that resembles something of a funky-looking top hat in many ways. The center of this disk is the same size as the inner diameter of our inner ring of Halbach arrays. In fact, if our current level of 3D printing technology has anything to say about it, this new disk would be printed as a part of the inner ring assembly. This inner core extends up to just above the assembly that holds the upper levitation ring in place. At this point, a relatively thin shelf extends up to a perimeter that lies just beyond the outer perimeter of the outer ring of Halbach arrays. The inner core of this disk then extends up a little further to help provide for a firm foundation for the next step in our blasphemous activities. Now, what you must at least try to understand is that I know about as much about electricity as a dead squirrel knows or even cares about Britney Spears' love life. Consequently, I've had to turn to an outside source or two for the information that will help us complete this exercise in thinking outside the box. The information used in the remainder of this exercise can be found in or inferred from United States Patent Number 382279, Nikola Tesla's electromagnetic motor. In this patent, there is a ring of magnets that is mounted on a dynamo of some sort. These magnets alternate between north and south poles facing outward. In this thought exercise, I have created a ring of 16 magnets that alternate between north and south as they travel around the perimeter of their circle. If we are in agreement with the creation of our permanent magnetic gyroscope, and you have come to terms with the idea that the disk does not have to be thin and flat, and that the design I have proposed is a viable option, then let us take this one step further. Let us mount this ring of alternating magnets on the shelf that is suspended just above the upper levitation ring that is serving to stabilize the inner ring of Halbach arrays as it accelerates and spins up to its maximum potential velocity. Now let us mount the generator coils as outlined in Tesla's patent and see what happens. I am not going to make any extravagant claims about this thing because, as I said, I know next to nothing about electricity. But I am going to say that this configuration should generate a certain amount of electricity. I don't know how much, but it should be enough to do at least a little work. Since this permanent, magnetically driven electromagnetic motor is kind of top-heavy, I would like to suggest that if you should decide to stand it on end, you might want to go to the trouble and expense of building a second generator and mounting them back to back to create a certain amount of balance. Now that we have committed a major act of blasphemy against the current paradigm and those who would stifle our future, let us take a look at a few of the potential uses for this new kind of generator. As I list these potential applications, please keep in mind that this generator is little more than a rudimentary power supply. I am relatively certain that any number of other generators of a similar design are already in existence, and that many of these may be far more efficient than this one will ever be. I must also ask you to please keep in mind that a few of the applications I'm about to mention will require the development of at least a few quote-unquote breakthrough technologies that are not really all that complicated. Let us start with something simple. How about a self-contained electric hot water heater? The development of this device would drastically reduce the need for natural gas. The next step is a self-contained, fully electric lawnmower. Yes, I know electric lawnmowers already exist, but they need to be charged. How difficult would it be to build a completely self-contained electric lawnmower? The next step up is a completely self-contained electric ATV. Yes, I know that they are primarily gas-powered today, but the question I have to ask is why not? After the ATV, and before we do a full frontal assault on the automotive industry, I am going to make the claim that this basic electrical generator could easily be perfected and scaled up to provide enough power for your average home. Once the upscaled version of this generator has been perfected, it is only a very small step forward to being able to power a car, and that would drastically reduce the need for and our dependence upon oil. Living as I do in Wyoming, I know that ranchers tend to prefer trucks over cars. It will take a lot of work and a lot of convincing to give these people a reason to want to change to an electric truck. But if we could develop an electronic gearing system that would provide them with the power they both want and need, I think it could be done. The next step up will be buses and RVs. While we might be able to develop a fully self-contained airplane using the current propeller design, a much more efficient design does exist that could easily eliminate the need for gasoline-powered airplanes. For some reason, I have always had a problem with propeller-driven watercraft. It has nothing to do with the gasoline they use, but rather the fact that those propellers are stirring up the home environments of any number of aquatic creatures. If we can get the new airplane propeller system perfected, it could easily be adapted to watercraft and boats of all sizes. The biggest savings, I think, would come in the long-haul trucking industry. When the price of diesel goes up, the price of everything they haul goes up. If we remove the need for diesel, the prices of just about everything should go down. The result? Our cost of living should go down. Another hard sell will be the farmers and ranchers who use tractors and their accessories to make a living and feed the people. If we can develop a line of self-contained electric tractors that will do everything their current tractors will do, then we might be able to enlist their support in this transition. Perhaps the biggest challenge might be the airline industry. But then again, if we were able to develop the propeller system for smaller aircraft, it will only be a hop, skip, and a jump to the development of fully electronic replacements for jet engines. And if they don't have to haul around all that fuel, their costs will go down, which means that ticket prices should go down as well. Additionally, without all that fuel on board, flying will be a whole heck of a lot safer, because if a plane should go down, the risk of explosion would be drastically reduced. And now let's take a step out into the wild side of things. If we can get this generator perfected, it could easily provide for all the electrical needs of any space stations or satellites mankind can dream up and build. And now for the really wild stuff. Who the hell gave NASA permission to export our garbage to Mars? The Curiosity rover is nuclear powered. What this means is that that fuel cell is going to be poisoning the Martian atmosphere with its radiation for hundreds, if not thousands of years to come. If I lived on Mars, I would be royally ticked off at those idiots. This generator, once perfected, could easily provide any and or all future robotic explorers with an indefinite supply of non-polluting energy.
Well, here we are, at the end of your first lesson in thinking outside the box. You now have most, if not all, of the information you will need to build your own permanent, magnetically driven electromagnetic motor. Now, given the subject matter of this particular lesson, I have the feeling I should offer a few challenges. To the naysayers, those who would sit back and say, it'll never work, it's impossible, it defies the laws of physics. I challenge you to prove me wrong. I have given you the information you will need to build this thing. It may not be the most efficient or effective, but it'll work. Prove to me it's wrong. If you can't get it to work, you will have proven one thing. The combination of elements you used didn't work. I look at it this way. Just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean it's impossible. All it means is we haven't tried the right combination of elements yet. Now, to the captains of industry, I have this to say. There are all kinds of people out there, I guess we call them conspiracy theorists, who claim that all you care about is money, and that you have actively suppressed anything that threatens the current paradigm, or your positions in power. Well, I have a challenge for you. Prove these people wrong. More than that, I challenge you to prove to the peoples of this planet that you honestly do care about this environment. Look, you and I both know that burning fossil fuels poisons the atmosphere. Additionally, we both know that several of the techniques you are using to extract coal, oil, and natural gas from the planet are not doing it any favors. I challenge you to get out of the way of progress. In fact, I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to challenge you to fund some of this research with the understanding that once it is developed, you will do everything in your power to see that it comes to market at a reasonable price that the common, ordinary, everyday man on the street can afford. The reason for these challenges is really quite simple. The way things look right now, you guys are purposely killing the planet, making it uninhabitable for human beings. And you couldn't care less. Because all you care about is money and the illusions of power. You don't have any power. You have the illusions of power. Now, to the politicians of this world, I have a challenge for you. It's more direct. Prove to the people that you are elected to serve that you are not bought and paid for by corporations, big banks, and special interest groups. Pave the way for these technologies to be developed and deployed. And when you're doing this, my challenge to you is to make the punishment stick. I don't want some mamby-pamby fine that any big corporation or bank or special interest group can afford. Make it stick. If these guys want to play big boy games, they better be prepared to play by big boy rules. Well, folks, there you have it. The future is in your hands now. Good luck.